WWE just crossed a line that no one is talking about, and what happened to Seth Rollins after Monday Night Raw has left Becky Lynch in absolute shambles. While everyone's focused on the injury itself, nobody is addressing the real story: Howie's reckless booking decisions are literally destroying families behind the scenes. You think you know what happened that night. You don't know anything. The footage they showed you on TV was sanitized, edited, and packaged to protect WWE's image. But what really went down in that hospital room, the phone calls between Becky and Seth at 3 a.m., and the conversations WWE executives had about whether to continue this storyline, that's the story they're desperately trying to bury. And before you even think about defending WWE's handling of this situation, ask yourself this: how many more wrestlers need to be wheeled out on stretchers before we admit that entertainment has become more important than human lives? How many more families need to be torn apart by injuries that could have been prevented? Seth Rollins didn't just injure his leg that night. He shattered something far more precious: the sense of security that Becky Lynch had fought years to build. And if you think that's dramatic, wait until you hear what she said to Vince McMahon in that heated backstage confrontation that WWE is pretending never happened. The wrestling world has been buzzing about Seth Rollins' devastating leg injury, but what they're not telling you is how this incident has exposed the ugly truth about WWE's treatment of their biggest stars and their families. This isn't just another wrestling injury story. This is about a company that has systematically prioritized profits over people, and how one of the most powerful couples in sports entertainment is being forced to pay the ultimate price. Let me paint you the real picture of what happened that Monday night, because what you saw on television was a carefully orchestrated cover-up designed to minimize WWE's liability and public relations nightmare. The match was supposed to be routine. Seth Rollins, the Monday Night Messiah, going up against a mid-card opponent in what should have been a standard television match. But here's what WWE doesn't want you to know: Seth had been complaining about leg discomfort for weeks leading up to this match. Medical reports that have since been leaked show that WWE's medical staff had documented concerns about potential stress fractures in Seth's lower leg as early as 3 weeks before the injury occurred. But did WWE pull him from the match? Did they give him time to heal? Absolutely not. Because WWE had already invested millions in storylines featuring Seth Rollins, and taking him off television would have meant rewriting months of programming. So they pumped him full of painkillers, told him to work through it, and sent him out there like a lamb to slaughter. The injury itself was horrific. We've all seen the replay, that sickening moment when Seth's leg bent in a way that legs aren't supposed to bend. The sound of the bone snapping was audible even over the crowd noise. But what you didn't see was Seth's immediate reaction. The cameras quickly cut away, but witnesses backstage report that Seth's first words weren't about the pain, they were about Becky. "Someone needs to call Becky," he gasped as EMTs rushed to his aid. "Don't let her see this on TV. Please don't let her find out this way." But it was too late. Becky Lynch was backstage preparing for her own segment later that night when she heard the commotion from the production truck. The moment she saw the replay on the monitors, witnesses say she let out a scream that could be heard throughout the entire backstage area. Her knees buckled, and she had to be physically supported by fellow wrestlers who rushed to her aid. What happened next is where this story gets truly heartbreaking, and it's something WWE has gone to extraordinary lengths to keep secret. Becky immediately demanded to be taken to Seth, but WWE officials blocked her path. They claimed it was for medical privacy reasons, but the real reason was far more sinister. WWE executives were already in damage control mode, and they knew that having Becky Lynch, one of their biggest stars and Seth's real-life partner, seen in distress would only amplify the severity of the situation. So they locked her in a room. That's right, WWE literally confined Becky Lynch to a backstage area for over 2 hours while Seth was being loaded into an ambulance and rushed to the hospital. During this time, she was making frantic phone calls, trying to reach Seth, trying to reach the hospital, trying to get any information about the man she loves. The audio from these phone calls, which has been obtained through sources close to the situation, is absolutely devastating. In one call to WWE's head of talent relations, Becky can be heard screaming, "You people are monsters. You knew he was hurt and you sent him out there anyway." If something happens to him, I will burn this entire company to the ground. But perhaps the most heartbreaking moment came in a phone call she made to her mother back in Ireland. Through tears, Becky explained that she couldn't get to Seth, that WWE was treating them like prisoners rather than human beings, and that she was terrified about what this injury might mean for their future together. "I've given everything to this company," she sobbed. "My body, my relationships, my entire adult life. And this is how they repay us. By putting the man I love in danger for the sake of a television show." Meanwhile, Seth was being rushed through emergency surgery at a local hospital. The injury was far worse than WWE initially reported. What they described as a minor leg injury was actually a compound fracture that required extensive reconstructive surgery and carried the very real possibility of ending Seth's career permanently. The surgeon who performed the operation later revealed in a confidential report that the injury showed clear signs of pre-existing stress and weakness, supporting the theory that Seth had been wrestling through pain for weeks before the catastrophic failure. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. While Seth was fighting for his career and possibly his ability to walk normally again, WWE executives were already meeting to discuss how to spin the injury for maximum storyline benefit. Internal emails that have since been leaked show that Wee's creative team was actually excited about the injury, viewing it as an opportunity to create authentic emotional content featuring Becky Lynch's real-life anguish. One particularly disgusting email from a high-ranking creative executive read, "This is gold. We can milk Becky's real emotions for months. The fans will eat up the authentic drama." When Becky finally made it to the hospital nearly 4 hours after the injury occurred, she found Seth heavily sedated and hooked up to multiple machines. The sight of the man she loves in such a vulnerable state, knowing that it could have been prevented, broke something inside her that may never fully heal. Nurses on duty that night report that Becky never left Seth's bedside for the next 48 hours. She refused meals, refused sleep, and turned away countless WWE officials who came to the hospital trying to convince her to make public statements or film content for television. It was during this hospital vigil that Becky made a decision that would shock the wrestling world, though WWE has worked tirelessly to keep it secret. She called WWE's head of talent relations and delivered an ultimatum that sent shockwaves through the company's executive offices. "Either you make massive changes to how you treat your talent's health and safety, or I walk," she reportedly said. "And when I walk, I'm taking everyone I can with me, and I'm telling the world exactly what kind of company WWE really is." This wasn't an empty threat. Becky Lynch is arguably WWE's biggest female star and one of the most respected voices in the locker room. Her departure would not only be a massive financial blow to WWE, but it would also likely inspire other top stars to reconsider their own relationships with the company. The response from WWE's executives was predictably tone-deaf. Rather than address Becky's concerns about talent safety, they offered her more money, better storylines, and increased creative control. They completely missed the point. This wasn't about career advancement or financial compensation. This was about basic human decency and the safety of the people she cares about. Becky's rejection of these offers led to one of the most explosive backstage confrontations in WWE history. Sources present during the meeting describe it as nuclear, with Becky unleashing years of pent-up frustration about WWE's treatment of its talent. "You people are vampires," she reportedly screamed at a room full of WWE executives. "You suck the life out of everyone who walks through your doors, and you don't care who gets hurt as long as the money keeps flowing. Well, I'm done being complicit in your machine." The meeting ended with Becky storming out, leaving WWE executives scrambling to figure out how to contain what they knew could become a public relations disaster of epic proportions. But the real heartbreak was still to come. Over the following days, as Seth began to wake up from his surgery-induced haze, the full extent of his injury became clear. The doctors were optimistic about his recovery, but they couldn't guarantee that he would ever wrestle again at the same level. For a performer like Seth Rollins, whose entire identity is built around being one of the best wrestlers in the world, this uncertainty was devastating. Becky watched helplessly as the man she loves struggled with the possibility that his career, his passion, his life's work, might be over. The conversations they had during those dark days in the hospital room reveal a level of emotional pain that goes far beyond physical injury. "I keep thinking about all the things we planned," Seth reportedly told Becky during one particularly difficult night. "The matches we wanted to have, the stories we wanted to tell, the legacy we wanted to build together. What if that's all gone now?" Becky's response, according to sources close to the couple, was both heartbreaking and inspiring. "Then we'll build something new together. But first, we're going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." And that's exactly what Becky Lynch has been doing behind the scenes. While WWE's public relations machine has been working overtime to minimize the severity of Seth's injury and downplay any suggestions of negligence, Becky has been quietly building a coalition of wrestlers, medical professionals, and industry insiders who are demanding real changes to WWE's health and safety protocols. The changes she's pushing for aren't minor tweaks, they're fundamental shifts in how WWE approaches talent health. Mandatory injury disclosure policies, independent medical evaluations, and the right for wrestlers to refuse matches if they feel unsafe are just the beginning of what Becky is demanding. But WWE's response has been to try to silence her through legal intimidation and financial pressure. The company has made it clear that any public statements about Seth's injury or WWE's role in it could result in breach of contract lawsuits and financial penalties that could bankrupt even a star of Becky's caliber. This is where the story becomes truly infuriating. WWE isn't just content with having potentially ended Seth Rollins' career through negligence, they're now actively trying to prevent his partner from advocating for the safety of other wrestlers. They're using their legal and financial power to silence the very person who is best positioned to create positive change in the industry. The psychological toll this entire ordeal has taken on Becky Lynch cannot be overstated. Friends close to the couple report that she's been struggling with severe anxiety and depression since Seth's injury. The woman who once proclaimed herself the man, and dominated WWE programming with her confidence and charisma has been reduced to a shadow of her former self. Sleep has become nearly impossible for Becky. She spends her nights researching medical studies about similar injuries, contacting other wrestlers who have dealt with career-threatening injuries, and building the case for why WWE's current approach to talent health is not just inadequate but actively dangerous. During the day, she maintains a public facade of strength and optimism, appearing at WWE events and fulfilling her contractual obligations. But those who know her well can see the toll it's taking. The spark in her eyes has dimmed, her legendary intensity in the ring has been replaced by what can only be described as going through the motions. The most heartbreaking aspect of this entire situation is watching one of wrestling's strongest personalities be systematically broken down by a system that should have protected the person she loves most. Becky Lynch built her career on being fearless, on standing up to anyone and everyone who tried to diminish her or hold her back. But how do you fight a system that holds your career, your financial security, and your future hostage? WWE knows exactly what they're doing. They've created a situation where Becky's desire to protect other wrestlers from suffering the same fate as Seth is in direct conflict with her ability to maintain her livelihood and care for Seth during his recovery. It's a form of emotional blackmail that reveals the true nature of WWE's relationship with its talent. The company that markets itself as sports entertainment, and prides itself on creating larger-than-life characters has reduced two of its biggest stars to pawns in a game where human suffering is just another plot device to be exploited for profit. But perhaps the most disgusting aspect of this entire situation is how WWE has attempted to use Seth's injury and Becky's anguish as fodder for their television programming. Creative pitches that have been leaked show storylines where Becky's real-life emotional trauma would be incorporated into fictional feuds, essentially forcing her to relive her worst moments for the entertainment of wrestling fans. One particularly vile proposal suggested a storyline where Becky would blame herself for Seth's injury, creating months of television content based on her genuine guilt and self-doubt. Another pitch involved having Becky snap and attack other wrestlers in fits of rage, using her real emotional instability as the foundation for entertainment. These proposals weren't rejected because they were morally reprehensible, they were rejected because Becky refused to participate in them, threatening legal action if WWE attempted to exploit her personal trauma for storyline purposes. The level of callousness required to even consider such storylines reveals everything you need to know about WWE's corporate culture. This is a company that views human suffering not as something to be prevented or addressed, but as content to be packaged and sold. Meanwhile, Seth's recovery has been slower and more complicated than anyone initially hoped. The physical therapy sessions are grueling, and progress has been inconsistent. Some days, he can walk without assistance and the future looks bright.